Cool. Hey, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Dan Boyles. I'm here as Head of AI at First AI Group. And look, we have got an awesome webinar in front of us today. We're going to be talking all things strategy, adoption, the road ahead. Really excited to be on the session. We're going to be digging into one of the most pressing topics, I think, out there at the moment, right now, for any business, but specifically for this industry, how AI, specifically Copilot, are transforming the way organizations operate, innovate, and then remain compliant in a fast changing landscape. We've got some really awesome guests with us today as well. So from Microsoft, we're joined by Michael Dawson. So he'll be giving us his view from the technology forefront, especially what Microsoft are doing, the roadmaps, the experiences, and the great messaging from there. From the end users, we're joined by Shawbrook Bank. So we've got Jonathan Hughes and Binesh as well, who'll be joining us there, talking around their customer journey. And then also from TechUK, we've got James, who'll be helping connect the dots between regulation, innovation, and the stuff that he's seeing from the members within TechUK. So massive thank you for joining us on there. Just so everyone knows, at First AI, we've supported over 50 end users now, deployment across heavily regulated industries. And what's become clear is this: it's really easy to understand. AI is no longer experimental. It is driving change, it's driving innovation, and it's going at a rate that I've never seen a technology work. It's operational, it's strategic, and most importantly, it needs to be secure, especially in your industry. We're going to be looking at some of the real world use cases, compliance considerations, and everything that it takes to have a successful rollout in your AI environment. So let's get into it. First of all, Michael, thank you for joining us. Can I pass over to you? Would you be able just to introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, and why you're with me today talking? That's cool.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dan. Name's Michael Dawson. I'm what's classed as a modern work specialist at Microsoft. Been so for 7 years now, I believe. And deeply rooted into the financial services industry. The role over the last 7 years, as you can imagine, changed quite dramatically. There was a time when I was talking about Skype for Business, and then that quickly sprinted to Teams through COVID, and now in the last couple of years, it's all been Copilot focused. That's me. Lovely to be on the call today.
Cheers. Thanks for joining us. Jonathan, can I pass over to you, please?
Yeah, hi, I'm Jonathan Hughes, Shawbrook Bank. I've been with the bank for 10 years now and head up the estate strategy. Initially started out procurement, evolved in facilities, portfolio management, and now all things estate.
Awesome, good. And Binesh as well.
Hey Dan, so I'm Binesh. I'm a finance insights manager over at Shawbrook Bank. Been to the bank 3 years, predominantly mostly banking experience. My primary role is to integrate technology within the finance function, be it AI tools or in automation, workflow, MI analytics, right across the board. This year's focus has been a lot around the AI and ML space. So I'll give you some more insights on what we've done.
Nice one, cheers, Binesh. And last but not least, James from TechUK. If you want to come over.
Hello everyone, my name is James Challinar. I'm the Head of Financial Services here at TechUK. TechUK is the industry body for technology companies, and I lead on the area of work where we apply the technology to the financial services sector. So I operate at that interchange between tech business leaders, financial business leaders, and then of course the regulators and the FCA.
Nice one. Thanks all for joining me on this chat. Just for everyone in here, if you've got any questions, we'll be opening up at the end. We want to hear kind of your questions from the attendees. So please feel free to pop your questions either in the Q&A in the chat. We've also got our team on the background that will be handling those. Anything you want to know from any of the people on there, please pop into that. Look, it's going to be a real casual Q&A, but I guess, Michael, if we could start from you. Copilot has evolved so much. So I was part of Copilot when it first launched back in 2023, and it's amazing to see the journey of it. What are you seeing from customers at the moment? Obviously, in the finance industry, how's Microsoft kind of shaping to meet the needs in areas, and what kind of comes some of the biggest use cases you're seeing at the moment in those industries?
Yeah, that's quite a big question, and it's one that we have been on a journey on over the last couple of years with a broad mix of customers. I specifically concentrate with banking capital markets, but as an organization at Microsoft, we're obviously dealing with insurers as well, the insurance market as well. I guess security, compliance, risk, they've a long time have been top of mind in all highly regulated industries, FSI not being, of course, being one of those. And so, for a long time now, we've been having to bake into our products and our services, security and compliance. And, the introduction of Purview was a big moment in time for us from a compliance and perspective. And so, when it came to AI, getting on board with, the regulators and obviously all of our customers in terms of demonstrating to them that, Copilot, which was our kind of off-the-shelf offering in the M365 space, was going to be as secure as the M365 service boundary as it is, that they're kind of comfortable with, that's compliant, that respects data boundaries, and underpinned by our responsible AI framework as well, which we've been working really closely, again, with the regulators, with the EU AI Act as well. So yeah, we've got people across the business that are really looking very closely at this, because no one in the financial services industry wants to put anything into their organization, any type of service or any type of product where there's risk. The risk appetite in financial services is super low. And so it's our responsibility to help organizations mitigate that. And we're doing that, right? We're seeing great activations, great deployments, great use cases, which maybe I'll come onto a little bit later. But yeah, I'll come up for air there. But
That's cool.
Yeah, it's a fundamental part of our mantra at Microsoft. We're a security first organization. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great answer on that. I think for us, I'm an AI geek. I build AI fun. I use most tools. I look at most things, but the secure side and the compliance side is something that I'm really interested in. And I think at the moment it's being underhyped a little bit, in some of the less regulated industries, but specifically in the FSI, it's something that I think people need to take a massive focus into. Obviously from things like NIST 2.0, you've got the GDPR, EU Act and things around that. I was ex-Microsoft about 8 years, so security is born and bred into me on that one. And it's good to see that actually that's being focused on from an AI perspective as well. So if we're talking around that, governance and compliance and everything, I'm going to pass it over to Binesh and Jonathan, obviously from an end user perspective. How have you found the experience of regulations, challenges, compliance, and how has kind of Microsoft and Copilot tied into that and made it easier for you on the rollout?
Yeah, Jonathan, I can jump in here as well, because initially what we did, we worked with our IT, legal and compliance partners initially as the first phase. So we get given a handful of licenses. It's got embedded internally as an enterprise version. Part of that messaging and communication to our users was, this is internal. You can use it within restricted guardrails. The communication was put in place, demonstrations were put in place as well. But I think that's what some of the challenges are usually faced, is working with IT compliance and risk, and that really slows the output down. We had a curve where it's an excitement, and then obviously there was restrictions and guardrails put in place and what you can do and how you can do things, and then there was a back and forth between the IT and legal and compliance sectors before we actually bed in an environment where we can start functioning and using it. So we've had a few challenges. What from our perspective, a few challenges, but I think that's probably one takeaway where AI can work for us is how can we implement controls and AI in a more fluid way where it works in a more faster environment overall, I'd suggest.
Yeah, and I would say on that, from my experience, kind of leading quite a lot of the deployments and working alongside businesses, is we're kind of in a bit of a dilemma at the moment. We want speed to market. Like our staff want to use AI. They are using AI. They use it in every sense. But actually, how do we then meet their needs but keep it in a secure and compliant way? Shadow AI, all the other stuff that goes with it. And it's not just AI, it's been a risk. It's been shadow computing, it's been shadow networking, it's been shadow SaaS software that we're using. But AI kind of, if anything, speeds up that need on there, because we want to use it, we are using it, and if the business isn't using it, then we need to find a quick way of doing it. So actually, I'm going to pass over to James on this one. That's one of the questions we had. Would you see the regulatory and the compliance side as a blocker to AI being adopted in businesses, or actually, if it's not that, what are some of the biggest blockers that we're finding for the FSI actually adopting AI into their workplaces?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So I was at a roundtable with the FCA CEO 2 weeks ago, and they called in a lot of the leadership from the relevant trade associations around the theme of AI in financial services. And the roundtable was organised because all of the trade associations kept saying in policy outputs that regulatory uncertainty is blocking AI adoption. So Nikhil from the FCA sat everyone down and basically said, well, can you point to specific areas of regulation that are stopping your organisation adopting AI? And the kind of answer that came back was there wasn't many exact examples. And as the discussion evolved, it became clear it was more of a confidence issue. I think particularly between the FS institutions, so the large financial services companies, and the AI vendor community, so the third-party providers, a trust gap has developed between the two. I think it's from the FCA research, 2/3 of AI use in financial services is built within house, more to do with the large companies. 1/3 is provided from the third-party community. And JP Morgan, as an example, put out an open letter the other week calling on third-party providers to prioritize security rather than speed to market. I think there's a lot of concerns when it comes to using AI vendors around liability, transparency, how the AI models work. As an example, if something goes wrong, who's liable? Is it who picked the model, who deployed the model, who created the model? So I don't feel it's particularly areas of regulatory uncertainty that are slowing adoption. It's more of a confidence and trust issue between the two sectors of technology and financial services.
Great answer. And just passing back on to Michael on that, I know you spoke around, we've got the NIST regulations built in for M365. Just want to give a bit of an elevator pitch on how Microsoft actually works with customers, the security that inherits from your M365 estate and stuff like that. Is there anything from Microsoft's side?
It's kind of, I mean, as I say, we've been doing this for a couple of years now, and these were the kind of the challenging, tough conversations we were having 2 years ago. And I'd say, across what we sort of classify as our enterprise customer base within financial services, there are 100 clients, and Shawbrook is one of those. And across those 100, I'd say now we are 90%, like there are licenses in at least 90% of those organizations, right? And that hasn't come without, and I'm not saying that's wall to wall, actually, but far from that. I mean, there are some within there who've gone statewide, but everyone has at least got some sort of evaluation or proof of concept going into different areas. And yeah, I think it gets tricky when there's sort of customer data, client data, and typically it can be historically shielded. The use of Copilot has been shielded from those kind of relationship managers because of the fear of, where's customer client data going and how's it treated and handled. But there are mitigations that can be put in place for that, and we're seeing some really kind of cool use cases actually in that relationship manager space. If I take one example, I know London Stock Exchange are using Copilot along with their own integration with Meeting Prep, an LSEG Meeting Prep application that actually sits within Copilot almost as an agent, and it helps a relationship manager sort of prep for a meeting with a client in advance, pulling all the data from their streams into a nice view. So we're getting around that, but kind of coming back to answer the question, Microsoft has been helping in this space by kind of starting with data and security. So starting with data, and it really has helped accelerate customers with their data posture. What are you doing with SharePoint? Where have you been with your data classification, sensitivity labeling? And I think it's shone a light on a potentially an area where maybe some organizations weren't quite so up to speed with some of those sorts of areas. And so I think that's what for me, across those 100 businesses, as I say, of which Shawbrook is one, there's been a lot of, how do I put it, a real sprint towards getting that data piece in a way that any AI technology can be leveraged, right? I mean, we were chatting just before we went live. We're very cognizant of the fact that there is more AI platforms and technologies out there than Microsoft Copilot. And it's all of the big tech firms' responsibility to help our customers across all industries to feel that, to feel safe and confident in using this tech, and that does start with security and data. So
yeah, great answer. I think we're in an arms race at the moment, but you've hit the nail on the head. That I think specifically my experience with Microsoft in the past and with Copilot is that data is the focus of this rather than just having a tool that's amazing to use. And I think having a focus grounded on data, on the compliance side, on purview, DLP, labeling, classification, all the stuff that goes into it. And I would possibly say from my experience, a lot of the blockers that we're seeing from businesses actually adopting AI is because their data is not that great. And whether that's been accidental negligence of data over the last few years, or things such as lockdown where teams were able to start their own Teams channels, cross things that it's caused a bit of an issue now. So yeah, great to hear from that. I'm going to pass over to Shawbrook. What's your overall experience of using Copilot and other AI tools in your project? How have you found it so far? What's the impact?
Yeah, so let me take that one, because I mean, just to explain kind of the interface between me and Binesh, then kind of Binesh and his team have kind of been leading it from a financial insights perspective, but in terms of it really taking off, it's a case of, well, what are the use cases to demonstrate how this is benefiting the organization, and what value can we get out of it? So I was kind of one of the earlier adopters in terms of saying, I really want to explore this and see how it can benefit my role. And I started off with a lot of caution and kind of hit a number of stumbling blocks in terms of it asking for a number of information, and kind of to the comments in terms of other AI tools, then sometimes you can go to another one and it'll give you loads of information. Obviously, that has to be handled in a sensitive manner, and there's kind of the guardrails and kind of guidance in terms of doing that. But what I've found on my journey kind of like in the last 6 months is the more that I've been using Copilot and the more that I've been using it in that secure space, that it's actually better understood my priorities, my role, also all of the documentation, which I pay far more attention to now in terms of how it's structured and kind of housed in SharePoint. My prompts have improved, but also the feedback has improved a lot, and it offers a lot more context and is actually giving me a lot better examples. So now sometimes I will complement it with other tools, but actually the results I'm getting are improving kind of day by day, if you like, just in terms of using a lot more. So what started with really Teams Transcribe, that was the one that really kind of sparked my interest in terms of productivity, kind of led me on a journey of curiosity, really, in terms of drafting emails, writing reports. Now I can review. I mean, some of the things that take a long time will be kind of leases, which is kind of why I have to review a long times in preparation for either an exit, a break, or whatever I might need to do as part of my strategy. And it can now pull out that information in a few seconds in something that would probably take me an hour to read. So I'm definitely saving a lot of time. Always have to look at all things with caution in terms of, is it pulling the right data? And what I found as well as a lessons learned is, because quite often it's pulling information from all areas of either kind of the Shawbrook domain or the wider internet, is verifying what it's pulling. So again, in terms of the naming format of a number of my files, making sure it's actually pulling the right information. Is it pulling information from the latest policy? So it's made me really reflect in terms of how I organize my work, how I organize my documents, and by doing that, it's actually improved the outputs that I've got.
Awesome answer. Binesh, anything to add on to that?
I think echo the same comments as Jonathan overall on that piece. Yeah, I think I've similar experience. Obviously, from my perspective, we use quite a wide range of other AI tools as well. But from a Copilot perspective, the primary goal initially, I think an individual like me that's on 10 meetings in a day sometimes, it's to save, literally hours worth of minute taking and note gathering and action implementation. It's so productive, a massive improvement in I've become far more efficient overall as well. So I think I've been able to take more on, which I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I managed to take more on the fact that I've got like a mini assistant helping me to take them actions and next points off the back of me as well.
Yeah, I had someone summarize Copilot as it makes you good at things you're not good at. And actually, it's such a personal product that we use. So how I use Copilot will be vastly different to every single one of you on this call. So when I talk about, people ask for the best use cases, is I can talk about use cases for myself. And again, it's exactly that. I am customer facing. Therefore, the majority of my Copilot uses is preparation, reconciliation of meeting notes, customer management, preparation of documents, creation of documents, etc., etc. But actually, for as quite a few of the businesses we've worked in, especially in the FSI, we can hit three things, right? We've got the organization goals. So is the organization going through rapid growth? Is it going through mergers and acquisitions? Absolutely, Copilot has a spot in that, but it also goes down into supporting the individuals. Is it closing a skill gap? Is it replacing a skill gap? Is it meaning that you can have quicker time to customer acquisition, quicker time or lower cost of customer acquisition, reports reconciliation, especially in the accounting sector and heavy data sector? I struggle answering that of what is the best use cases in insert sector just because it's so wide and varied on there. Now, from a personal point, that's absolutely great. Digging into the agentic world, it gets infinitely more incredible because you can build something specific for you in your job role. And that's not just limited to, again, on the meeting side, on the transcription. That's when we can tie into third-party applications. We can tie into other areas where really we can see the individual being sort of helped on there. I'm just going to push back onto Jonathan for one quick question is, aside from that, what are some of the heavy hitting use cases, maybe business wide, that you've seen across all of your users, maybe just away from the standard messaging of the meetings and transcription stuff? Is there anything that you thought, wow, this is great?
So when I'd really appreciated the things that it can do, it kind of made me really look at kind of real life or real work problems that I could tackle. So one of the key things on my agenda is looking at the whole ESG framework and climate change and net zero transition. And in order to do that, it's a case of actually analysing a lot of data. So take any particular site, we'll get energy data. So I was able to get that data and analyze it to help me kind of identify any particular peaks, as in literally in the first instance, analyze it just as the data was. And it would give me those classic seasonal trends, night and day, etc. But then on top of that, then I was able to benchmark that against industry. Again, with all of these things, you kind of need to sense check what are the sources. And then I'm starting to look at these things in terms of, for just to kind of explain a little bit about kind of some of the climate requirements you have to do, then there's something called ESOS, which is Energy Saving Opportunity Scheme. They will do an audit every 5 years and they will give you some recommendations. So you can kind of like draw in some of that information to kind of overlay that other information and then look at it in the context of what you want to do in terms of science-based initiatives, line, and also kind of any upcoming regulations that could be coming down the track in terms of how does this fit into that overall strategy. So it's allowed me to kind of pull so much information to look at essentially what is a challenge over the next 20, 30 years, as opposed to just a short-term hit, and kind of looking what is the impact of any individual site, what might I need to do in terms of allowing us to transition in the way that we want to do. So it's certainly nothing I can say, I started this case study and it's all done and this was the result. It's very much kind of a massive project, but each time I can iterate and add to it and it kind of recalls all the previous information. So it's really been an interesting journey and one that's very much live at the moment.
Epic answer. James, over for TechUK, I'm going to pass to you, my friend. What role do you see TechUK playing in shaping the guidance and best practices for kind of safe and ethical AI uses, especially in high-stake environments such as FSI?
I think TechUK and kind of industry associations more broadly will play quite a key role, and particularly around the point of convening the financial services and technology sector. I think given what I was saying previously, that the regulators felt there's not regulatory issues standing in the way of adoption, they have been sort of pushing it onto the trade associations to do more to help build that trust and that confidence. So I think as an example for TechUK, we have about 150 technology companies attached to the program here. They're all interested in engaging with the financial services sector. We have a few financial services members, but not a huge number. We're looking to partner with another industry association to bring the financial services element and get together around a theme of topical areas of interest. So I think in terms of the role of trade associations, it's mainly about bringing people together, sharing best practice, sharing case studies. I mean, webinars like this are a good example, getting people together to talk about what's working and what's not. I think that's really what the role of TechUK is in this space. And then if the regulatory point does come up, we can kind of put that industry voice to the regulators, although I don't predict any kind of sea change in their regulatory approach as of yet.
Cool. Well, that's answered the next question I was going to ask you is what do you think the next kind of evolutions were going to be that, or how do you think it is going to evolve that regulatory landscape while managing the risk? Because it's a real thing, right? And this is one of the best webinars I've done in a while, because I have Microsoft a vendor, I have TechUK as an advisory board, and I have an end user. Normally we find it's very end user heavy, or it's kind of TechUK or that. So kind of the three of us to hash it out. I guess it's an open question to all three of you, is how do you see the landscape changing? Do you think it's going to become more heavily regulated? Do you think there's going to be, because the GDPR EU Act is now, as of June, there's more focus on that. Where do we see it going?
I think from my perspective, so as I was saying, I don't see any sea change happening. I think governments are quite happy with the sort of the pro-innovation sector-led approach that the UK has pursued. I've generally heard support for that from industry leaders, although I think it's a little bit overdone how unanimous that support is. I think a lot of the times when you hear people talking about this, they say the way they make it out as if every single company agrees that the UK's approach is the correct one. That's not entirely what I've heard. I think as you go up the size chain of companies, it's increasingly likely that the firms are going to say the UK's approach is the right one to take. I have heard that a lot of the smaller companies, or maybe I shouldn't say a lot, but some of the smaller companies like the idea of the EU's more prescriptive approach. And I think the thinking is that if they're told exactly what they need to do, it's easier for them to follow, and they don't have a team of compliance or regulatory people who can interpret the rules for them. So they would prefer to just be told what to do. I think that is a minority viewpoint. So I still think the UK's approach is the one we're going to pursue. I would just add to that as well, with some of the larger companies, there has been points raised that if companies, particularly the big international players, see Europe as one block, they might end up, for ease of doing business, just end up adopting the highest watermark of regulation for Europe, which would be the EU's AI Act. And that would potentially impact the UK by making it that we don't get the benefit of that pro-innovation approach. So that's another caveat to the approach that we're pursuing in relation to Europe. But I don't see anything changing massively.
Nice one. And I guess Michael over at Microsoft. Microsoft, even from when I was there, like security is always the forefront of every message on there. How is Microsoft working with partners and customers to ensure explainable AI use and responsible use? I know there's a lot of kind of customer-facing material, but is there anything you're specifically doing with partners to drive that messaging?
Yeah, and I guess just building on that last point around the the highest kind of watermark, or the highest level, or the most protected level, we will ultimately align with that. Examples of that are where we've aligned with frameworks such as EU AI Act, GDPR, DORA. Making sure that our AI is compliant, transparent, auditable. So and building into that principles like fairness and accountability. We even have a responsible AI dashboard as well that helps explain how all of our models are working. So everything that we do in that respect is responsible AI, and the standards there are embedded into those tools of both M365 Copilot, Copilot Chat, which is the included version, and now agents as well. So and there's all sorts of pen testing and risk assessments and things that we're doing, red teaming as well. So it's a super important topic, and it's one that we don't take lightly. So
But and it's really refreshing to hear, because, like I said, I am a fan of AI in general. But the fact that, especially in the agentic world, because as soon as people say they're playing with agents, a red flag goes off in my head. It's like, what platform are you playing it on? What are the guardrails? What's on there? But what I absolutely love from the Copilot perspective is if your security is set up correct, everything you do inherits that security, and it just makes it easier. We're almost democratizing innovation and giving businesses the ability for everyone that can innovate with AI. Because I think gone are the days, personally, where the leadership will think of a way to innovate and will just pass it down to the business, and the end user almost just gets on it and does it. Because with AI, like I said, because it makes us good at things we're not good at, everyone now can innovate it into their role. And some of the most successful use cases we've seen is that democratization, where everyone has a say in what this can do, because also different generations have different experiences with tech, right? So depending on where we are in our journey on there. An interesting point from me is in our personal life, we are light years ahead of where we are in our business life. So in our personal life, we use biometric security day in and day out. In our business life, I found with some end users, it's very painful to get MFA turned on. We live in an agile world with our devices. Businesses are quickly catching up, but AI, the fact it took 41 days to get 100 million users onto ChatGPT, is insane. So the need for it is there, and it's almost businesses have to catch up with it as opposed to kind of wanting to do it. So knowing there's everything from Microsoft from a secure and safe and responsible, especially around non-biased AI usage, the copyright protection, the fact that you can only use Copilot to do business-related activities is absolutely great from my business, because we can approach a customer with confidence, knowing that actually all the other stuff you're worried about, shadow AI, risk, copyright, is it going to create something that is hallucinating? All this stuff is minimized on there. So, like I say, I've got Copilot socks on today. That's the level of Copilot from me. I'm going to pass it back over to Shawbrook, obviously, because I'd be dying to hear a bit more. What reflections and advice for new users beginning their journey have you got? So, if you could speak to yourself at the beginning of your journey, what would you give yourself feedback? What would maybe make the rollout smoother? What would you kind of wish you consider earlier on?
Yeah, Jonathan, I can take that. I think we actually we've got a visionary CFO, and his vision is effectively to make a finance function more focused on the data itself in terms of getting insights out of the data rather than transactional processing. So if you imagine this pyramid, at the top, if you got how much time you spend on analyzing the data, to the bottom where it's transactional processing, it seems like majority of the time is spent transactional processing. We're gathering numbers, data from different sources, reconciling, collating, and that's a big burden within our finance area. So when Copilot came in, we focused on some individual use cases initially, some low risk, high ticket items. And then we hosted an AI hackathon event with all of finance involved. So in that event, we showcased some of the value add from the Copilot use cases and from the other AI tool cases, just to get people's minds thinking and thinking what the art of the possible could be. So during that session, we talked through the pyramid structure, moving away from transactional processing, moving on to getting insights from that data, using our AI tools and machine learning tools where possible. And then a general overview of AI in general. And it was an eye-opener, because at the end of the session, we had small workshops within each of the finance functions like Treasury, FP&A, and we collated around circa 80 use cases to use within Copilot and AI overall. So from the back of that, not all of them were AI, but some of them identified, control issues, data issues, or workflow automation. Part of, using a wider suite of tools, but also using AI as well. So that was a real eye-opener for us, and now that's, I think, paved a 9-month roadmap for us for the next phases, where we're working within each of the core functions to start embedding and have AI champions or innovation champions, similar to Jonathan, within each area, that we have a top-down approach. So I work with these AI champions, and they work with the use cases or provide use cases, and we facilitate working with them directly to incorporate these use cases. We've seen some really exciting, outcomes as well. Some of the users where it takes them 2 days to review and analyze numbers for particular reports, and now using Copilot, they can get some of the insights, probably in a bit more detail, obviously within guardrails and validation, within a few minutes. Prior to a meeting, you can have more insights going into that meeting, and more insights to make better decisions as well.
Epic. I love that, and I'm really glad you said that, because it kind of backs up what I said around democratizing innovation. I heard that on a podcast, and I'm stealing it. I love that phrase now. But actually, we're given, like you say, running the workshops, running the hackathons. If you give people the knowledge that, look, Copilot is a mass data analysis tool and a mass data manipulation tool. It sees everything you do. Actually work with it, and that's what we find. I've been part of some quite successful rollouts, some really successful rollouts. I've also been part of rollouts before I joined First AI that weren't great, because we didn't put the user experience at the beginning of it. We just said, here's a tool, go and use it, and then we're wondering why people aren't using it in the way that we need to, right? So helping people understand the capabilities, but also working with the business to transform it. We're seeing massive gains on there. I think one of the things I do love as well is that, historically, you've always had someone in a business or a team of people that have been the go-to experts in a certain SaaS product, or you've always had like an absolute weapon at Excel, someone that was just good at Excel. And what I found is that Copilot almost closes the skill gaps on a lot of stuff. Now you can have an elevated staff bank of massively skilled people, but Copilot and AI can lean on that to help on there. So I'm going to pass it over to James quickly at TechUK on this. With that in mind, especially with the boom of AI, how can an SMB, so small to medium business, financial institution, keep up with the larger banks in adopting AI tools? How can that come to life, and how can we make sure that they're still involved and they're not left behind?
Yeah, it's quite a pressing question, and one that government and regulators and industry bodies are all quite live to. I think going back to one of my earlier points about 2/3 of AI use in financial services, roughly, this is FCA data being kind of developed in-house from some of the larger companies, 1/3 from the third-party vendor community. You would see, broadly speaking, the small and medium-sized companies being more reliant on that third-party vendor community. And that's where the friction really is, particularly around liability, transparency, if something goes wrong, who's liable. So the FCA are doing a lot of good stuff on this. I think often with small and medium-sized businesses, they might look at the FCA, see all the different things that are going on. They don't have like large compliance or regulatory teams, and they might feel a bit intimidated about what they can access, what they can't. I think broadly speaking, the FCA are very open to being contacted by small and medium-sized companies. At least that's what they tell me. I don't know if anyone dialing in might have different experiences of trying to get in touch with the FCA, but they say they're very open to hearing from small and medium-sized businesses. They put on a lot of like regulatory sandboxes. They're launching an AI testing lab. All of this is open to companies that want to take part. So I would say to those small and medium-sized businesses, definitely keep an eye on what the FCA and other regulators are doing. I think if you are a member of a trade association like TechUK, you can always use us to kind of signpost you to areas of engagement and how you can develop your knowledge. But I think, yeah, broadly speaking, that point, and then also the point around increasing to that bridge between the vendor and the institution community, building the trust between the two and helping kind of AI adoption more broadly will help that as well.
Cool. Michael, question for you on this one, if we're kind of keeping on this, is I see Copilot as the ultimate leveler in a business. It makes me good at things I'm not good at, and that's all I need to tell people on it. How does Microsoft stance envision Copilot evolving, both from a frontline financial profession versus the back office team? Are you kind of aligned with the fact that this can help all of us evolve, and there's not really an excuse now for a business to have a weak area because there's quite an easy solution to get into that?
Yeah, no, it's from a social mobility perspective. I think it's actually it has the potential to be super powerful to elevate, individuals who maybe think more creatively but struggle to articulate in words, who on the flip side may articulate really well in words but actually struggle to think of it creativity on the creativity side. So I think, if used correctly, it really does have the ability to help, uplift an organization's skill set. And, from a personal perspective, it definitely has the ability to help you in areas that have maybe held you back previously. I often think quicker than I speak or type. So I typically need to, which the net result being is I kind of ramble on and on and on when I'm writing an email. So I'll use it very regularly to just be a little bit more concise and kind of direct and to the point, which I love. But in terms of kind of where this stuff's going, you mentioned arms race earlier, and I guess that's maybe language that officially I wouldn't use, but
I can say it. You can't. Microsoft stance isn't arms race. Mine is it's an arms race, but
we are genuinely the internal thinking is this is a real moment in time in terms of. If we think back to like Windows versus Mac OS back in like the early 90s, and who was going to kind of, who was going to win that kind of race in the enterprise space, that the socket, the AI socket, that lens, that we call it internally, we see Copilot as the UI for AI, right? You probably have seen that, or if you've been to any keynote recently by Satya or Judson or any of our exec, this concept of the UI for AI, and it's super important, which is why actually there's for many of you, you'll have already access to Copilot Chat, which is kind of the included version, and there's no license fee for that. It's a chance for colleagues, employees all over the world to actually get used to leveraging Copilot and get used to kind of prompting. So I think, we're going to start to see a shift towards people just getting really good at prompting, saving prompts, prompts that are helping personally, prompts that are helping at department level, and then prompts actually that are helping at an organization or even industry level. And the step on from prompts is agents actually. And funny enough, I'm actually talking less about the M365 Copilot license to my customers these days. On the reminder and caveat, I've been talking to them for a couple of years, right? So the new kind of thing that we're talking about really, and have been for 6 months or so, is this concept of agents and how to leverage agents, and whether it's personal productivity agents, whether it's a departmental agent. We're working with customers, for example, who are now building agents to help with complaint handling. And the use cases are kind of almost they just carry on and on and on. The more you sort of dive into it, it's really exciting. I've read a report that at some point in the not too distant future, we're going to be managing teams of agents, right? So they'll be popping up on org charts. I mean, imagine that, that traditional org chart of a business, and you'll have like in each team like a couple of agents that are kind of doing some, I don't know, some shallow tasks or administrative tasks or repetitive tasks. That's kind of cool. So we're going to be like agent bosses, managing these teams of agents. So it's kind of out there. It's it's in some of the research that our Microsoft research team have been doing globally. But I'll dig out the link to the report called this Frontier Research, and I'll stick it in the chat. So
please do. I think what you touched on there, the question we said was, how do we see it evolving for frontline versus back office, and agents for me is that agents is the play for the next 2 or 3 years, because I just think of agents as really smart interns that don't ever get tired. So actually, how can we enable that technology not to replace us, but to for preparations for meetings, for repetitive tasks, for your traditional RPA, but with AI on top of it? We've seen the uptake on it go mad, and again, it's supporting businesses in what they're weak in. So, for example, you have a large organization. There are going to be either areas that don't have enough staff. So how can we offload that onto agents to support? It could be targeting aggressive growth, right down to your SMB features or your SMB companies, where actually an agent, for the cost of developing, deploying and building an agent, that can be 10 times cheaper than employing someone that doesn't just have that specific skill set. So actually, for me, I see agents do it. And this, what I love about Copilot, and again, firmly on Team Copilot on this, is how easy it is to take it to market, right? How easy it is to think of something, build something, test it in your sandbox environment, but deploy it in a safe way. And it also ties into a question we had, which was, how do you help ensure that the financial institution remains compliant when using Copilot? And how do you make sure the agents are secure and not leaking data? Anything that you have on your M365 tenant, from a security point, from a compliance point, Copilot will inherently adopt those secure positions on it. So, what we do when we work with businesses is we do, the readiness. Microsoft have got an incredible readiness assessment for it. There's security readiness. We will test on data to make sure. But my advice would be, don't roll anything out org-wide. Always start, as Shawbrook said, with a focus group, test it on a controlled environment, and then push it out from there. So it inherits your security, inherits your compliance, inherits everything that you've got in your tenant-wide, and puts that down to the end user is absolutely fantastic. I would just not advise letting everyone go and do it straight away. Always build it in a secure environment. Now, question for Shawbrook. I'm going to push back over on here because I want to keep us equal on the time and stuff. You mentioned earlier on about the energy consumption. How has analysing your energy consumption impacted on your operations from the SG standpoint?
So it's made me think a lot more about the quality of the data in different areas. So the example I gave before was where I can quite readily get half-hourly data. So I actually had 20,000 data points, which was hence the kind of the benefit of being able to use AI to kind of analyze that in more detail. Got other sites where it just comes through an electricity bill. And so there are two ways of tackling that. It's either installing new technology to get more granular data, like different kind of meters, or picking up on the comment around agents and kind of how to do that. Are there better ways in terms of extracting that data for things that routinely come in kind of on a monthly basis? So it's making me think about different ways to analyze the data. And then I commented previously on the reports and other things that we now need to report on in terms of what have we identified, what measures have we put in, how is that affecting, kind of thinking about, well, can I actually extract the data that I need to be able to report to that? If I can't, why not? Is it a case of I'm not reading the data in the correct way, or is it a case of we don't have the things that we need? And some of those instances will be a case of, well, it might be an older site and therefore it kind of requires investment in terms of enabling that technology. Sometimes it might just be kind of a simple measure of kind of changing a sensor, so a light automatically goes off. So there are a number of different ways. So I think the whole thing I found with AI is kind of very much an iterative process. It'll give you a bit of information which kind of feeds a thought, and quite often, so within Shawbrook, I've got an outsourced facilities team that kind of I manage, and so I will do kind of a lot of the thinking around the estate and the portfolio. The daily operations are managed by my team, and I will often share this information, push them, challenge kind of the team in terms of, well, have you looked at this? And at the same time, they will also be looking at AI and tools and kind of developing and bringing ideas to me, and therefore it's an iterative process where they'll bring things to the fore to say, well, we can do this, and then I can challenge, sense check, and it's like you were talking before around that skills gap. It really is a leveler in terms of kind of pulling on information that you haven't previously had the time to kind of deep dive and get that knowledge on. Whereas certainly within a facilities and estate space, then I've got that broad knowledge of all of the areas, but things change so rapidly kind of year on year, new regulations, being able to go kind of very, very quickly to get the key information to ensure that regulation and change is not a blocker but an enabler to develop as a business.
Great answer. Right, I'm going to do a quick questions to all of you. So whoever wants to answer first, you're more than welcome to. If not, I'll just pick on someone. If you could wave a magic wand and fix one challenge around AI adoption in finance, what would it be? So it could be anything at all, but it's good that we've got all different parts of the business here. Anyone want to answer first?
Dan, I'll give you one. If I can get all of our controls, legal, risk, all to work together with the snap of a finger, to work together to have AI enabled and be available, rather than the whole 3 to 6 months of governance and criteria and setting up standards. I think if there's a way of doing that, that would be perfect. That means we're adopting the technology sooner, we're getting the value add sooner. That's my one ask, I'd say.
James, anything from your side?
I just very simply say clearer communication and collaboration with third-party developers and large companies that might be deploying the models.
Cool. Michael?
Yeah, I think so. Adoption, right? How to? I think Binesh has kind of got the major one, right? I'd love it. It'd be a dream world if every file, every document was stored in SharePoint and OneDrive, and it was all had the correct labeling. Because then it would definitely be a blast through some of the hurdles that we've been experiencing. But you know what? From an adoption perspective, I think just use it, right? Just try and use it. Just if you're gonna, we're running some days with our customers where we encourage, and it requires a lot of internal comms, right? It's not easy. You don't just sort of send one email and this happens. You have to kind of have a big build up to it. But maybe once a month, you do a start with Copilot day, and anything that you do, you try and start with Copilot, see if it can help and make it a habit and build that muscle. That would be kind of a tip there.
Cool. Next question up for everyone. What's one bold prediction you're going to make about AI in the financial services by the end of 2026? So the end of next year, what's something bold?
I don't know how bold it is necessarily, but I might just make the point of increasing use of agentic AI. I think particularly when it comes to its impact on jobs and entry-level roles, I've heard quite different things, but I know a lot of the larger institutions and some of the banks are looking at agentic AI models quite closely, and how that might, how those models might be able to do a lot of the entry-level tasks that are currently done by analysts, people straight out of university. What the impact on those analysts and those entry-level roles are going to be remains to be seen. I don't think anyone truly knows, if they're going to be recreated jobs in other areas, if jobs are going to be cut back, etc., etc. But I think maybe just the increasing impact of agentic AI in financial services.
Yeah, I'd second that. I think in 18 months' time, we will all be using agents, whether we know it or not.
Yeah. I echo the same. I think like a virtual team member will be part of your team effectively, right? It's I second that as well.
I can see myself being just a virtual Dan, just there, popping up a little avatar on. Nobody wants that, trust me. And then lastly, it's a bit of a thought, but I did send this question across, so if anyone has an answer, that's cool. If you haven't, but how do we ensure tools like Copilot don't widen the gap between tech-savvy firms and those struggling with data readiness? How do we make sure that doesn't become a thing?
I mean, for me, it's sharing the knowledge. I mean, as a business, we're not going to hold back to ensure that the gap doesn't broaden. For me, it's a case of you need to adopt it, you need to learn it, use it, and not get left behind.
Yeah.
So, but I think kind of to the responsibility point, doing things like this, and certainly from my perspective, kind of talking with third parties, talking to supply chain, kind of working closely together, helping people who probably don't have the resources necessarily to kind of invest up front to try and understand this, how to do it. Sharing that kind of allows everybody to come on the journey, because I think if everybody's using, then it's going to be better for everybody. And if all of my supply partners are using it, then it means that they can bring me more and better information and better insight, which in turn will help me. So it really is just sharing the knowledge and remembering the struggles that I had 6 months ago or a year ago when I was first really kind of dipping my toe and trying to understand how this could benefit my role.
Just to build on that, and because I've just put it in the chat, there's a heap of free and readily available resources to help any size of organization adopt M365 Copilot and Copilot Chat. Hey, look, I said it, I think near to the top of the call, we're sort of cognizant of the fact that there are other AI engines out there, and I'm pretty sure that some of that material in there, it's all targeted at M365 Copilot, but the learnings and the principles would apply to any AI. So I think it's definitely just building on Jonathan's point there, responsibility of big tech, big enterprise to share learnings and to provide materials such as the attached in the chat.
I think for me it's like there is an opportunity to absolutely revolutionize how we change everybody. It's not just down to an individual business having a competitive advantage. I think staff are going to be expecting it. We're going to have AI is going to become the new mobile phone. The first thing I do in the morning is check my phone. The last thing I do before I go to sleep is I check my phone, right? And I think AI is going to become so critical onto that. And I think all of us have responsibility, if we're at the forefront of doing something, to share, to make sure that we talk about our failings as much as our successes, because I have failed doing adoptions. I will put my hands up on this. I haven't taken into considerations things such as security, compliance, or controls, or the wider stuff. So I think if everyone plays nice in the next 2 years, we're going to see society go like this, not just an individual company. And that's really exciting for me as a business or someone that helps run a business can talk with on there. I am just going to quickly just go through in terms of what we do at First AI for those that don't know. Thank you to everyone that's spoken so far, but effectively we are a company that helps you adopt AI into your business. We help you adopt Copilot. We provide adoption managers, either as part of we can give you people into your business to help run that, or we can guide you through the whole process. We have agentic building capabilities. We have a whole department with some really skilled adoption managers that are building real live projects and real live agents that are going into businesses now. And we also have the ability to give you capability inside your business. You know, we were formed as a company to provide adoption, to help bridge that skill gap, but also to help businesses thrive. And everything that we've talked around on the call is something that at First AI Group we can do on there. We have three core pillars that we focus on in a business. So we have a foundation part of the business, which is where if you are at a stage where you're thinking about Copilot, you're thinking about AI, we can help you on that journey. We can run discovery workshops. We can help you identify the use cases. We can provide a roadmap from a consultative point on adoption, on training, on your agentic side. And then we can also skill up everyone at a basic level. And that goes both from Copilot Chat, which is the free version, if you're not ready to make the investment, or if you're ready to make the investment, we can then also put that onto Copilot for M365. We're a pure play adoption business. We don't do anything else apart from that, which means this is all we focus on all day long. From the pilot side of stuff, and it's probably one of our most deployed services, is it's a focus group. Right? If you have a large institution, yes, the challenges of adopting into a wide business we've all talked about. You've got compliance, you've got data, you've got security, you've got the skill gap. We take a focus group. So we may take 10 people. We might take 2 people from sales, 2 from HR, 2 from operations, 2 from the back office. And we work really close with them over a period from 6 to 10 weeks. We identify the use cases, where we identify agent opportunities. We build custom prompts, custom workflows. And by the end of that 6-week or 10-week period, we can come to you for your business and give you an entire roadmap to push out. We can support that with hands-on training, web training. We give physical material away afterwards, and the support right through on that. Moving on to the scale side of the business, we can do business-wide transformation through workshops. We can solely help you on your prompt engineering, your automation insights, your return on investment strategy, your business case for keeping the AI journey going. We can help on things such as your needs assessments and the champion programs. So everything we've heard from TechUK, from Microsoft, from Shawbrook, we're able to provide you with, and we do it in 2 ways. We can either offer you as a fixed term service. So if you want a proof of concept, if you want myself and the adoption managers to come in and kind of lead the project for you, we absolutely have the capability to do that. The other thing that we do have is the ability that if you want to take one of our staff members internally, so if you have an SMB right up to enterprise, we can provide you staff that can sit in your adoption part of that business. So our staff can do all the stuff that from a top level you might not have the capability or the people power to do. So the needs assessments, the prompt engineering, the development, we have that capability. Right, so our service is solely built to help you adopt Copilot and empower your business. Done over 50 adoptions so far, and our agent side of the business is absolutely growing. So we have a lot of experience, especially in the FSI. So please reach out and speak to us if you want to know anything about that. I've got just realised I wasn't actually sharing the screens. Oof. I had some nice slides you could look at there, but you just looked at my face talking instead. If anybody does want to have a chat after today, if there's anything you've heard from any of the team on the webinar and you want to chat, please feel free to scan your QR code if your business allows you to. If your policy says you can't scan QR codes, that can be bad sometimes, please feel free to reach out to us at firstaigroup.com, or my email address is on the screen as well. I think we've answered all the questions from the chat that have come through so far. I just want to say thank you to Michael, James, Binesh and Jonathan for your time on today. Really appreciate it. Have a good weekend. Let's talk AI. I love it. Thanks so much.
Great stuff.